You know, if there's one question I get asked more than any other, more even than why does your nose run and your feet smell, that question would have to be, Mark, is the Diana F Plus a legitimate photography tool pretending to be a toy, or are you a tool for using a toy camera? Well, today we're going to try and answer that question. Diana, goddess of the moon, the countryside, hunters, and crossroads for some reason, so affiliated with both 1980s TV cop shows and Britney Spears movies, as well as princesses and pop stars. This is destined to be the queen of my heart, surely. After all, the art of photography resides in the soul of the photographer. It is these eyes that create the magic, and the camera is the liminal plane that exists between the artist and the subject, a threshold of boundless aesthetic possibilities. Well, before we get sucked into a black hole of hipster philosophizing, let me just say that I have always avoided toy cameras, and that's for one very specific reason: they take crap photos. But I am open to the boundless creative possibilities afforded by the most primitive tools. Some of the greatest art has been created with charcoal and paper. More importantly, it was found at the op shop for a fraction of the cost of a new one, but still probably no more than it's worth. The Diana is based on a Chinese camera produced by Great Wall Plastic Company. While the phrase Great Wall conjures notions of permanence and unassailability, this isn't carved out of granite. These cameras were sold as novelty items to saturate the small commodities market and add to the plastic landfill that we build new suburbs on today. Your dad may have received a gold one in 1970 as part of a promotion for buying 400 packets of Benson and Hedges. Fast forward a few decades, and some entitled Viennese millennials discovered you could slap a Lomography sticker on it, along with an exorbitant price tag, and foist it on a generation of hipsters as the lo-fi alternative to real photography. Finally, they can convince their mates their photos aren't shit because they're defying clinical perfection of the digital hegemony, when in fact, they're even more shit because you've got all the flaws of bad light and composition compounded by all of the flaws of light leaks and plastic lenses. Hey, I get it. Shit film photography with shit cameras are kind of my shtick, but even I have standards. Or do I? Can I come to grips with the constraints of the Diana F and actually make some decent photos? Is this a crayon in the hands of Picasso, or am I just some 1980s IRA protester smearing feces on my jail cell wall? Well, to test it out, I took it out to the local Wetland with a roll of Kentmere 400 medium format film. Fortunately, it didn't actually break while I was loading the film, so that's a plus right there. In full light, so what I will do is set it to sunny, make sure it's on infinity. It's about 4 meters to infinity now. That'll be more than 4 meters, and let's take this. Two shots down. This is very stiff. 1, 2, 3. Number 3. to this one, what I'm going to do is I'm going to set it for the sun and let everything else go dark, considering how bright the highlights on that wood is, and I'm going to set for close focusing. Beautiful light on those ferns. So we'll go for a close-up. Let's get in a bit closer where there's a little bit less stuff going on. We obviously won't end up with the green of the pond slime. We might get something. A couple of shots here, I think. First of all, definitely got to capture the curve of those trees and the path. Who doesn't love a good leading line? But I think also I might try and take a pinhole shot of those branches. Not quite sure from what angle, but let's see how we go. So what I'm trying to do is keep the trunk on the left of the screen there to try and obscure some of the brightness to the left of the image, and perhaps to put a bit of a natural frame around the square. Now, I've never done pinhole photography before. I've put this on a little Ulanzi tabletop tripod. I'll try and find a place to put that on. In order to get the pinhole happening, and I don't know if anyone can actually see this because I don't have this on the tripod, I do need to remove this lens, which is just a case of unscrewing it. There we go, pinhole effect achieved. Set the bottom to P for pinhole. Set this to B for bulb. And what I also need to do is somehow find a way to cover the lens while I can do the pinhole. Not sure how I'm going to do that. So we've set up our pinhole shot. I don't know if Oscar is going to be the star of it. What we're going to have to do is work out a way of keeping the shutter open. That should be fairly straightforward. There's a little plastic tag that you put in the shutter mechanism to hold it open. But I need to find a way to keep the pinhole covered until such a time as I'm ready to actually take that picture, and it might just be a case of my finger covering the pinhole. I did think I only had one shot left. Wound it on to 11, which means somewhere there's a double exposure in there. Can't wait to discover which one it is. Definitely a snake in there. Really think of a way that I can remove a lot of this clutter, so maybe I just embrace it. But what I'm going to look for now is one last opportunity for Pinhole. I want something with plenty of depth to the scene, something where I can get this down low on the ground and somewhere that I can actually reach to so that I can get a 1 or 2 second shutter. So sit back for an unsolicited and possibly quite unwarranted review of this chunk of plastic with a thorough analysis based upon the one roll of film that I put through it. Too long, don't read it, it's meh. I mean, it wasn't a disaster. I managed to guess the focus and exposure for the most part. The negatives came out clean and with a reasonable density and no blown highlights. It was quite contrasty out there and the cloud and sun settings managed to give me frames. There's definitely some light leaks or some other weird artifacts on the film, whether that's a film transport issue or just the cheap plastic seals, but there are some definite marks on the film, and one of the frames at least has some strange flaring or lens barrel leakage. I noticed it was close to the Pinhole frame that I shot. In terms of usability, well, it's not a precision tool. It feels unpleasant in the hand, and honestly, the thing is so poorly built, I'm kind of surprised it didn't break just in normal use. The viewfinder gives no real sense of framing, and the shutter sounds awful. But it's really light. The fact that you have a medium format camera that comes in at 220 grams is something to consider if you want a camera to take with you on a day trip. It's also quite liberating in that you're so stuck for options that it's quite difficult to go wrong. You only have one shutter speed, and Wikipedia claims that can vary from anywhere between a 200th to a 30th of a second. Zone focusing is easy enough since you only have 3 options, and the 3 apertures you can choose from are f11, f13 and f19, so you can get a fairly deep depth of field, at least for medium format. Based on these specs, I was definitely not working with precision, but that probably doesn't matter because everything is soft anyway, and that's the thing about this camera. Let's be kind and call them characteristics rather than flaws, but you end up with a final image that has all of the things that make a Diana baked in. You get what you get. And that's not such a bad thing necessarily if you're willing to just strap yourself into the rickety roller coaster of using it and being a passive passenger on the road to the final image. But while there's fun in the randomness and inflexibility of the results, the inability to wrangle it to your own artistic intent is a limitation. It's far easier to scuff up something that's clean than to try and squeeze quality out of an inherently flawed result. So there's not much you can do about the softness of the lens, its inconsistency across the focal plane, and the glow that you get in the highlights. Of course, your results may vary. In fact, I'm sure your results will vary because of the lack of consistency in the production process. In my copy at least, you can see the bokeh is jittery, the lens seems particularly soft at infinity focus as well. Lots of people have reported vignetting as a problem for this and other toy cameras. Actually, that's not that noticeable in my copy, but that's where I feel a bit cheated. Despite the generous size of 120 film, you can see that the Diana doesn't take or make most of the surface area. The negatives are a little small, so perhaps those dark corners are just cropped. Look, in real terms, it probably doesn't make much difference, but I'm cheap, and while that's a quality in myself I'm proud of, it's not one I respect in my dealings with others. I look at the empty space on the negative, and all I see is missed opportunity in the same way as putting an APS-C lens on a full-frame camera. If I want to crop, let me do it myself later. Am I being harsh? Probably. And just as the difference between a 16 and 20 megapixel sensor isn't going to make much real world difference, and it's not like the lens is sharp enough to resolve the potential of the film emulsion anyway, but I guess part of the problem is that I'm spoiled. I already have two 6x9 cameras that make full use of the 120 film format. And while this Wetlander Besser doesn't take sharp or contrasty images either, it does have a quality to them that the Diana lacks. The lens can be sharp in certain conditions and in certain parts of the frame. So in many respects, you get a more varied and interesting look. Would I recommend this camera? Well, while I was reviewing the results, I couldn't help thinking to myself that it's called an F+, and that's the grade I'll give it. Now I'm actually making and editing this video, I'm not so sure. Perhaps it doesn't deserve a C, more a wait and see. It's certainly not a good pictorial camera in the sense of wanting to capture detail in a landscape. Maybe it would be better as a street photography tool where I can just shoot from the hip without even thinking too much about the composition and allowing myself to be surprised by the results. But film is expensive, I'm cheap, and I'm also a control freak. In just about any scenario, I can't help but think of more reliable alternatives. Like this Agfa Isola, very basic, really not so much different from the Diana, but it has a glass lens, and I can't help but feel when I'm using this, I'm using a serious tool. You get all of the character without too much of the compromise. This thing has given me some pleasing shots in the past. The best part is that you can pick up one of these things secondhand for the same price and be even more pretentious in your smug satisfaction that your Isola may be pretty crap true, but it's vintage crap and that makes you cool. But let me know your own thoughts in the comments below. Have you used one, or do you use a toy camera? Which ones and what specific scenario would make you think of loading a precious roll of film into one and taking it out? And of course, please do like and subscribe if you want to see more random reviews of cameras like this. So let's conclude and try and be a little bit kind to the Diana. After all, you're never going to make a silk purse out of a sow's ear, but you can potentially make a decent leather money pouch to rival a kangaroo scrotum. And yes, that is a thing, look it up. In all fairness, I didn't hate the experience of using it. I didn't hate all of the photos it produced. It's just not like this was ever going to compete with my other cameras. And it has got me thinking about where I might be able to use it to good effect. More importantly, it has turned my eye back towards this little neglected shelf bunny and thinking, well, maybe I can use this sometime, because if I'm going to work with rue balls here, I may as well work with a finely grained supple leather gonad sack like this Agfa Isola. And of course, you can be sure I'll be sharing the results here later.